Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome, I guess, to the final of a month-long celebration. You know, it is the witching hour. It is the month of Halloween, and to celebrate this month, I did a month-long theme, which was Fear the Wolf, the month of werewolves. And so we've decided to end this, celebration, me and my good friend here, Mr. DJ Anubis, by talking about a very much, I think, underrated werewolf trilogy. And of course, that trilogy is the Ginger Snaps trilogy. So I'll be quite honest, I've only ever, up to this point, only ever seen the first of the three films. And so, to be honest, I didn't even know there were three. I knew there was a sequel, but I didn't know there was a third one. So, Mr. DJ Anubis, my friend, welcome. And also, what is it about Ginger Snaps that you like so much?
Well, the funny thing is, I recall kind of seeing this one close to when I first saw Dog Soldiers, and this one I think I saw again on like Sci-Fi or something. And so, at the time, didn't know much about it. Obviously, when I started watching, it was an interesting take on werewolves, like a lot different. I would approach it more with the female perspective. I instantly became a fan of Catherine Isabel through this, like very pretty girl, good actress. She went on to do a lot of great horror films after that. But obviously, also at the same time, you even now they kind of talk about where this film is sort of not just from a female perspective, but also almost from like a feminist perspective. So like it deals with women's, like they dealt with the puberty and Ginger kind of breaking out of this shell, and it was kind of like a correlation between the fantasy of the werewolf story versus just her as like a teenager, and coming into her own. Same with her sister, Bridget, and played by Emily Perkins. So you have these two sisters that are very close, but they're also sort of like on the outcast of the school and the popular kids. So it's just there's obviously that one moment when Ginger, she's been attacked by this creature and she starts noticing the change. It sort of gives her this confidence about herself, and it changes how she perceives things. She's getting stronger, smarter, more confident. So she's also being attracting boys, unlike her sister, who's still, just a normal girl, kind of seeing these changes take place. So when I saw this, I instantly became a fan of this film. It obviously the werewolf is a little bit different. It's more of the American werewolf type on all fours and stuff like that. So, it's different in that way, but I like what I like about Ginger Snaps is it's definitely a unique werewolf perspective and a very cool movie.
Yeah, I quite like these films. I actually grew to enjoy them the more I watched them. And the one thing I like is, as you've mentioned, it's about them two sisters, Bridget and Ginger, who, for the most part, are outcasts. It starts off as they're I wouldn't say necessarily like goths, but you've got the popular girls, you've got the cheerleaders, you've got you know what it's like in high school. There's different groups of individuals, and then you've got always like a group that are like the outcasts or the misunderstood, and that's virtually what they are. And Ginger, even though she acts like she's not bothered about being popular, there's like this underlining desire to want to be like the popular girls. Where Bridget, the other sister, basically, she she's 15. I think Ginger's a year older, or 2 years, 17, 16, and Bridget's 15. And of course, Ginger then starts going through puberty. She starts, having that first period, and the look at it is something really dark and tragic, but really it's just young girls becoming adults. And as the film starts, it starts off where they are doing these really morbid photography, like photo shoots of like them dying. And they've got like a blood pact. They're all very close, but they've got like this pact that they're gonna die together and all of this stuff. And one night, there's also, of course, at the same time, we've got these really like morbid sisters who are outcasts, but one's really wanting to fit in. You introduce to a couple of other people. You've got this lady who's like the high cool bitch, the bully. You've got the jock who everyone wants to bang. This guy. And then you have the other guy who's like, he's like an outcast as well, but he's like the local drug dealer.
Yep.
And then, of course, at the same time that's going on, there's these crazy animal killings happening in the town. You see like these things they find like, torn up dogs, everyone's fearful of the pets being ripped apart by this unknown animal that seems to be going round. Then one night, Ginger and Bridget decide to leave the house to kidnap, like I say, the bitch, this character. They decide they're going to kidnap the dog. Is like, is a way to get back at her because she's like been bullying them for the majority of them time at school. But on their way to kind of kidnap her dog, suddenly Ginger is attacked by this unknown animal, and suddenly she gets attacked by this animal. Bridget gets us. They run across the road to get away from it when suddenly, bang! It's hit by a truck, like a wagon, which happens to be his wagon. But unlike we know with previous werewolf films, where werewolves are normally killed by silver bullets, or killed by anything silver or medallions, or like cures from curses, and the werewolves in these are fairly, they can be killed by general ways. They can be run over, they can be stabbed, they can be shot, they can have their throats cut and they'll die. But after that, the initial werewolf is killed, suddenly Ginger begins, after being attacked and scratched, she starts to showcase signs that she's changing, and it's not just changes to her body because she's going through puberty or having her first, menstrual cycle. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but it's funny how the cycle that's going on with our body naturally is kind of going alongside like the moon and the changes of werewolves.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting approach by director John Fawcett, how he wanted to correlate that with, again, a young teenage girl going through puberty as just using kind of like the werewolf is a way to bring them together and sort of give you like this underlying theme, I guess, for a teenage girl. But it's all disguised as this horror film where she's actually becoming a werewolf. And it's kind of interesting too, because we talk about the body changes and how Ginger becomes more confident in how she looks, but it also applies to the changes she takes on with, like, she starts to grow like a little tail and stuff like that. So it treats it very interesting on how they correlate with one another in terms of the subject matter.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. Like, I don't know if I've seen that in any other werewolf movie where you see the person who's bitten start to like grow tails or animalistic traits to their own bodies. But in this, I found that so unique that they did it within the confines of Ginger Snaps. And it's funny when she first discovers her tail, and she's like, I'm growing a fucking tail. But not only is she physically changing, her mood's changing, and so obviously her parents just think she's going through mood swings because her hormones are changing. But her sister Bridget knows what's happened, so she knows that it's more than just mood changes. She then obviously, even the guys at school start to see a difference in her. She's
Yeah.
now starting to get very popular very fast, where Bridget is, out, unlike Ginger. Bridget still looked at as the outcast, except the one guy who I showed you who's also classed as an outcast. He suddenly becomes like an ally to her.
Yeah.
And he starts to like listen to what she's saying, and they start investigating like what's happening with Bridget, but they also see like her behavioural changes. And there's this one time, the young jock guy, this guy, he basically becomes meat, the bloody Ginger. He basically suckers her in, and either in the back of his truck.
Yeah, I like that. The whole idea was, well, it's two things. Like, so again, you said how Ginger really kind of wanted to fit in with this popular crowd. She wanted to be seen. Obviously, very pretty girl, and so the popular boy now gives her attention, which she really likes, especially with the bitchy girl, like doesn't like it. So when they're in the car together, Ginger and this jock, like it kind of flips it on its head. The guy is generally the one that's more like the predator, like kind of persuading the girl that has sex and all this stuff, which she's kind of game for.
Yeah.
But she doesn't understand that, like, with that hunger comes the other hunger, where she's now the werewolf is coming out and she's actually biting him and really attacking him, which is kind of funny. So
Yeah.
She becomes the predator and he becomes the prey, which is a very interesting dynamic that you see there.
Yeah. And there's that one scene where she's like being aggressive, and she went, listen, I'm the guy. I'm in charge. She's like, oh, really, bitch? And she like pushes him onto the thing. And you think she's actually killing him.
Yeah.
Because she's like gnawing on him. But then later on, it's revealed he hasn't been killed. But basically, she's like properly had she's took him to town, basically.
Exactly.
And she's had a wicked way with him. In like a really, really powerful way. But then he himself starts to grow. These looks like little markings on his face, but then it turns out it's like an STD. It's just like passed something onto him, a gene to him, which in natural fact, he starts to actually develop the werewolf skills himself.
Yeah.
And they did something I found very different in this movie. So as it progresses the plot, and Ginger, it's becoming more and more aware that she's turning into a werewolf. And like she starts to give into her, her hunger, and she starts feeding on people. They discover that there's like a flower that has the ability to potentially cure them.
Mm-hmm.
So they decide to test it on the guy, the jock, who's turned into a werewolf, and they believe it's worked. And so then they rush to try and get Ginger. But then as the film progresses, them are now closing, like getting close at the end of the movie, and we've got the mother's now realizing something's not right. To discover something's really terrible has happened. Bridget's now starting to realize not only is she going through puberty, not only is she kind of turning into this way, she's like losing who she is completely. And it's by this film's point where Ginger completely morphs into the werewolf that she is to become. And I have to be honest, I really quite enjoy the design of the werewolf.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have liked to see more hair on it, but clearly, like I said, the design is very cool. The color was cool. Um, and it does have that similar vibe to the American Werewolf in terms of like being on all fours and stuff like that. So it did a good job with it. Like I was happy about that. I'd rather have that than the sort of semi moment where you just see Ginger kind of get the nose and the fangs and stuff. Like if they would have left it like that, it'd be more like Wolf Man. But I'm glad they finally
Yeah.
went just all
Well,
into it.
when I look at this, I'll be truly honest. When I look at this, the movie poster, that doesn't scream werewolf. It screams vampire.
Yeah, correct. Especially
So
with like the Buffy the Vampire type of vampires.
yeah, yes. Which you can understand the appeal of the Ginger Snap films because it's trying to capture that audience.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a image of act transformations throughout the course of the movie. So you can see at the top corner there, she's like this moody goth, like outcast. Then she gets like the white in her hair after she's bitten, and as she's progressing, she's getting more blonde, and she fully morphs into the werewolf. But unfortunately, it does have a tragic end in this film where Bridget, she basically understands she cannot stop what's happening. So in the end, she ends up having to kill Ginger. Not before she's bitten herself.
Yeah, and I like some of the dynamic there because again, one thing that Fawcett does, the director, is that he not only stresses what he's trying to convey between the plot of the werewolf plus like what he wants to tell in terms of like young women growing up. He likes to focus on the bond between the sisters, and so there's that moment where I think Ginger kills the other guy, and she's trying to feed him to Bridget, who is not a werewolf, but she's like it's still like a sisterly thing. Like I'm going to share my meal with you, so you can be with me. And there is because Bridget does kind of pretend like she's trying to do it because she knows that Ginger's a werewolf, and it's hard to communicate with her because Ginger is not quite herself. She's like this creature now.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that he played with that as well to try to still bring that dynamic of closeness between the sisters, even when one is not even really the sister anymore. She's like something else completely.
And the way the guy that she kills, it's real brutal.
Yeah.
Basically drags him through the house and he's like into the basement area. And like you say, she's sitting there and she's like sitting next to the body which is dying, and Ginger's like, well, feed with me, and he's like, and she's like, she doesn't really know how to respond, and then she finally like, I can't do this, and then Ginger finally like kind of caves and like gives into the animalisticness and goes after her own sister because she probably feels in many ways because she's been an outcast and she was popular for a while, but now she's been rejected because she's turning into something else. And now she has turned into something else. She's now being rejected by her own sister again in many ways, which is not like on purpose. It's because she's this thing that can't, that shouldn't have happened to her, but it did happen to her.
Yeah.
So Ginger Snaps for me, it's like you say, it's an amazing coming story about two sisters and the bond between two sisters. And it's really well put together. And I think the effects are great. I think how they brought the film together was great. And then we got Ginger Snaps 2, which quickly follows. Which I believe this one and the third one were filmed back to back.
Yep. Same year. Yep.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me because I did not really expect Ginger Snaps to have any sequels because from what I recall, it cost like almost $4 million for Ginger Snaps to be made, but they did not make near that back. And so it was a little surprising that they jumped right into two different sequels. And I think even this sequel here that we're talking about was another 3.5 and it only made like 80 grand. So like they've lost their ass out on a lot of this. But to their credit, at least the first film is still considered a big classic among, horror fans. So
yeah, and I think as well, when it comes to these films, it's like I think they've got like a cult following.
Yeah.
They've quickly become fan favorite, and it makes me wonder because they have developed like a cult following and a fan, base. Like they might not have done well at the box office, but like through streaming and through constant, being rewatched on channels and that, maybe that's boosted its popularity, and the studio thought, well, give them a chance by doing maybe one or two sequels. But obviously, even then, these films haven't been as successful as they probably hoped. But the film basically starts off with Bridget, who, by the way, she looks totally different than like what she did in the previous one, where she was like this kind of moody little like outcast girl. She's now she's kind of now coming into her own. And this film basically takes a few, it's several weeks after the first one. Bridget now has, she's in many ways, she's like a drug addict.
Yeah.
She's
I forget the name of it's something like wolfsbane. So she's taken like a liquid form of wolfsbane. And that's sort of like, I guess, is repressing her change that she's figured out. So like you said, she's like a drug addict. She's been taking this stuff, but I think it's also
addictive.
Very, very, it's very unhealthy for her because it could kill her. So that she ends up getting put into this psychiatric ward, and there's all sorts of crazy shit going on there within those walls as well. When I know you're going to talk about your problems with this film, I've got a lot of my own problems with this film as well. So go ahead.
So obviously, this film, it's not directed by the same director. It's directed by Brett Sullivan. It's based on the same characters by John Fawcett, and it was written by Megan Martin, and it stars Emily Perkins, Tatiana Maslany, who knew growing up to become She-Hulk, and Catherine Isabel also returns, and you've also got Eric Johnson and Brendan Fleischer. So this film starts off where she's like staying in danky motels, all of this, she's trying to escape. She's basically being stalked by a male werewolf that's picked up on her scent. And she's staying in danky hotels. There's somebody that's trying to help her. And I have to say one thing I will say about this film. The werewolf design of the male werewolf, for me, was a better design.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a little more hair on there. Yeah, and again, it could be that when we see Ginger in the first one, maybe that's supposedly not quite her final form, because if you haven't seen it as someone who's watching this, Ginger just gradually changes. It's a process. So it's possible that we never actually saw the final form of Ginger, because I think a lot of what happens that night is like at a party, and she's still just kind of going through her final form, I guess. But at least with this male, we can see that certainly he's more hairier and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So obviously she's in a hotel. She's like addicted to the wolfbane flower. She does kind of discover that it's not going to stop her from becoming a werewolf, but it's just slowing the process down. Which kind of straight away has a question mark for me. What happened to the guy in the first movie who they tested it on? The jock?
Yeah.
So you had this guy who they tested it on, and then suddenly, boom, he's cured, but then he disappears. But now we discovered it's not actually going to stop them from transforming. It's literally just going to delay it. So that made me think, because I don't think it's ever revealed who the male werewolf is.
No.
So it
Nope.
makes me wonder if that werewolf is him.
Possible. But again, I think that's one of the weird things about this particular film is that there were parts when I watched it that I thought maybe the director was going to say everything that happened was in Bridget's head. Like, I was thinking maybe that was kind of like what was going to happen early on, but then you get, of course, the werewolf that's chasing them and, trying to track Bridget down and all that stuff. So then it turns into like, okay, like you said, well, who is the male werewolf? Where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just don't know. And so that leaves a bit of a gap in the story because, it'd be nice if they did refer back to the other guy from the first one because that would make sense, right? Like maybe the wolfsbane he was taking just didn't ultimately work. And so he ended up becoming the werewolf anyway.
But obviously, because she's trying to escape him, there's like an accident and she ends up in like this hospital, which is surrounded by people with schizophrenia, mental health issues, including this young lady who is called Ghost, who, there's been a house fire, our auntie or our guardian has been completely burnt to a crisp from top to toe, which I found hilarious. And then you have the sleazy guard who, he'll do anything for a shag, anything for a quick fix.
Yeah, he was really abusing his power in there, so to speak.
Yes, in more ways than one. So basically, as the plot progresses, they find out that this male werewolf is stalking Bridget, and she's also there receiving treatment, and that's when she starts having hallucinations of Ginger. She kind of makes appearances throughout the course of the movie, like talking to her, putting self-doubt in kind of Bridget's head. If, is she losing her mind, or, can she find a cure? Is she going to be stopped? All of this. And at the same time, she's getting close to this young girl, Ghost, who believes in fairy tales and monsters, and she's constantly drawing like comic strips with her and a pet monster or fighting a monster. There's all sorts of like stuff going on. Then you have the male god who's abusing his power, taking people into the dark, like the dark, it's kind of like a condemned part of the hospital. And he's like shagging girls there, and there's stuff going on there. And then the werewolf makes an appearance, kills a couple of people, to the point that Ghost and Bridget escape, and they go on like kind of like this road trip,
Yeah.
which somehow leads back to Ghost's house.
Yeah.
Which is like the fucking Home Alone house by the end of it.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the other thing about this film, too, is that, as you watch it, like I said, you start watching it early and you think that, okay, is Bridget just imagining what happened with her sister? And it was like some weird freak out thing. Then it gets to like, okay, we do have a werewolf chasing Bridget down. So then that becomes another storyline, basically. And then, of course, the final one where Ghost is like this really deceitful little girl who has manipulated or found a way to manipulate Bridget to be her service pet, basically. It's the way I could put it.
Yeah, so basically, as the film progresses, Ghost is very good at telling these like sad stories about our upbringing or how she's been trapped by her parents and her guardian and succouring in Bridget. And then near the end, even though he is a bit of a douchebag and he is abusing his power, she kind of hints that, you know, the guy in the hospital has been potentially sexually abusing Ghost. And it's basically her way of manipulating Bridget to kind of feed him to the werewolf outside to get revenge. But then obviously the werewolf breaks in. They manage to kill the werewolf, but then poor Bridget is basically, as she's morphing, she's looking up at Ghost, and then Ghost shows her true colours once again and traps Bridget within the confines of her home, and that's the thing of the cellar. And then it basically ends where Bridget's like this evil little bitch who's got her own pet werewolf in the basement, and she's like writing her stories, and it basically goes to black and ends with Bridget trapped. And this is why I got frustrated, because I then goes to the third movie, just assuming it's the direct continuation of the second one. Now, you and I have just done a review of Good Boy on Ghouls of Midnight, which will be airing soon on, you know, channel. And it's all about seeing things from the dog's perspective in the haunted house. Now, I thought, wouldn't it be great if the third Ginger Snaps is going to be from the werewolf's perspective of trying to escape and get into the wild and live, you know, and try to outsmart this manipulative little bitch of a girl who's got schizophrenia, is very good at tricking people. So you could have had scenes of when she's not a werewolf, if they do go back to human form, Bridget so malnourished inside the basement trying to find a way to out trick Ghost, and then when she's werewolf mode trying to find a way out of the basement but always being stopped by Ghost. I think that would have been a great third act.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't mind the third one as a prequel because there are things I like about it. But like you said with the second one, like the way the second one ends, it kind of leaves you frustrated because you're a little bit more angry now because you spend most of that movie kind of feeling bad for Bridget and how she's trying to fight the change. And you know, also you got these bad people around her, that guy that is an orderly who is abusing girls and stuff in there, and really just not a very nice guy. You feel bad for Ghost for most of this film, and then by the end of it, you're like, "Wow, she's an evil little bitch." Like, and you kind of want her to get her competence. You know, like, you know, you want her to face her own punishment for what she was doing, because it kind of told me whatever happened with Ghost when she was younger, it was intentional. Like, she was in that ward because she killed maybe her parents or hurt somebody in that fire.
Yeah.
So you kind of get this revelation that Ghost is just not a very, like, she's a smart little girl. She's used people to get what she wants out of her situation. So like you said, I look at that situation, I'm like, wow, it's frustrating because now Bridget's like basically a victim to this little girl in a different way.
So that's what I mean. Like, I was waiting for the third one to be a direct follow-up where it shows you what happens with Bridget and Ghost, but you're not going to know the answers because obviously there isn't a fourth one that like can continue on. But the thing with the third one, which is a prequel that takes you way back when, it's more or less continuing the story arc of the element of the first one, showing you the bond between sisters,
right?
And basically showing you. So this is the third movie. It's called Ginger Snaps Back, the beginning. And of course, Kathleen Isabel and Emily Perkins are both back in prominent roles. Like you said, another thing that frustrates you about the second one is you get elements of Ginger, but it's more like you don't know if it's hallucinations. Is she just imagining this? Is it really happening?
It's almost like American Wolf in London, where Ginger becomes like this, not so much a corpse, but she's a shadow and Bridget's past that talks to her and tells her like you need to like come to terms with what you are, yada yada yada. And I think that actually played a big part in why the third film was made like it was. Like you said, you wanted to see more of a conclusion to the second film. But I think what happened was they started to realize that Catherine was like a big fan favorite from the first film. And so they needed to find a way to bring Catherine back into this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to do that, you had to do a prequel because obviously she was dead already. So I think that's really what the mindset was when they did the prequel. Is like, well, how do we get Catherine back into this franchise and get people interested again? Because the second one, like you said, or at least I said, like they spent a lot of money on that one too, and it still failed. So I don't have the numbers for the third, but to me, it's like Emily Perkins is a good actress. She is. She does a great job in these films, but I don't think she had the star power, or at least the uh, what's the word I'm looking for? The pizzazz that Catherine brings. Like there's a different aura about the two actresses and their characters. So Catherine being in the prequel means that they're at least trying to draw more attention. Like Emily wasn't going to be able to carry that film by herself. So I think that's why that happened.
Yeah, it's just a shame. Like, I just wish that the sequels had done enough business where they even considered doing a fourth one, which was the follow up to the second one.
Yeah.
Because even then, they could have set it a few years later where the actress who plays Ghost is no longer a little girl, but maybe a teenager. And Bridget's been trapped in that basement all that time. And they could have even done something where there's another girl who is played by the same actress that plays Ginger, but she's like a neighbor, but she's somehow connected to the family bloodline. You know, since the third one kind of plays about the idea of the red and the black and the curse of the blood, and you know, it could have also been tied into it in some places. But hey ho, it is what you is. But that's my biggest frustration. The way the second one ended, I wanted like a bit of a pay, some sort of payoff.
Yeah.
But the third movie, I forgot where the fuck I was. The third movie, Ginger Snaps Back. The beginning is a 2004 Canadian horror film and prequel to Ginger Snaps and Ginger Snaps 2. So, like you see, this one's directed by Grant Harvey, written by Stephen Massacourt. It's based on John Fawcett's characters. It also stars Kathleen Isabel and Emily Perkins. And the plot basically states each spring a party from a fort travels the Hudson Bay to trade pelts for winter provisions. But in 1815, nobody returns. And so that is basically the beginning of this plot, where you've got this fort in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, where Canadian, pelt sellers go to trade. And then you've got these two sisters who are also called Bridget and Ginger, and their horse are basically traveling through the Canadian wilderness, where suddenly they're hearing noises. It sounds like wolves in the wilderness, and suddenly they are set upon by a what they think's a wolf, but it's more like a dog. And then the Indian, hunter knocks one of them out.
Yeah, we'll call him Jacob from Twilight. So I kept thinking of.
So Jacob from Twilight, basically, he leaves them, and they get rescued, but then suddenly, where the rescue, there's like the Indian lady, the enchantress, so I think she was. She's there suddenly. They're left there. There's nothing they can do, and I think it's Bridget runs off, and she's then her foot is trapped in like a fox trap. So Ginger runs away to basically go get help to save her, and comes back just in time to save her from being attacked. But she herself is then, they're basically rescued. They go to this fort, and suddenly, and there is some amazing moments in this film, because as the night dawns on the fort after being rescued from, the Indian hunter, from the fox trap, the horse going missing, it turning night. Suddenly, in this fort, there's like this crazy priest who's like looking at them like, the Jezebels, the unholy women. You've got like the leader of the fort, who, he's like trying to protect them, be a gentleman about things. You have another scumbag, this guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's, quite the gentleman. Then suddenly, they can hear that in the fort, they're all having dinner, and then they can hear the howls outside. There's like wolves, and suddenly the fort is attacked by a herd of werewolves, which for me are some of the best scenes in this film. This one and the climax right at the end, because some of the werewolf designs are brilliant.
Yeah, I liked. There is that moment when Ginger comes back. She's already been bitten, and they essentially banned her. They bashed her out of the fort, and she came back. And then you have that like rise of the lichen moment where the doors are opening and all of a sudden these wolves are coming in. I thought that was cool. And of course it was before Rise came out, but it has that feel of like, he's now like the alpha leader in some way for these wolves to come in. And very cool moment, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all those men who are in this fort, they are like the regular, I guess, people that live on the fort. And they said they're running out of food because they sent out their men to go out and to, bring supplies back, and they never returned. And now they're being hounded by these unforsaken werewolves, which I don't think they called them werewolves, but then obviously when day breaks after the first attack, a few of them being killed, they place the heads on the spikes outside the doors, which looks brilliant. I do have, is it up here or down here? It's up here. Oh, yeah, it is. I do have this backstage photo of the werewolf designs. They look even more fierce than the wolf from the second movie.
Yep, agree 100%.
Yeah, they look vicious as hell. But as the plot progresses, the girls are scared, Ginger's scared, the secrets are revealed throughout the course of the movie, including, the leader of the fort. He says his wife, he was married to an Indian woman, so the kind of he's frowned upon because obviously racism and, because of, things of that nature. Turns out he's had a son. His wife, he says he and his wife and his son were killed, but then it's revealed later on that he's keeping his son in like a locked room. Ginger wanders out in the middle of the night down a corridor, opens the door, finds the son, and basically goes to comfort him, and then he turns around and bites her, and it turns out he himself is transforming into a werewolf. And now she's been bitten, she's now been contaminated. And then just like the first movie, you see throughout the course of the movie are slowly transforming into the werewolf. At the same time, I guess it goes back to the second movie where she's having visions of Ginger after she's killed. Bridget's having these weird dreams of symbolisms and like forsaking like the future, what's happened. She sees her killing Ginger. She sees the Indian hunter. She sees the old lady. She sees like the massacre in front of her. So it's like she's got like, you know, this like a sixth sense when she's dreaming if events that are about to transpire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, what's your take on the third movie?
I do like it. It does a good job of, again, the one thing it works for it is that it works off of paranoia. All the guys within the forge are very nervous. They don't trust anybody on the outside. Doesn't matter who it is, because like obviously when the girls show up, there's two different types of paranoia. One is uh, that lead guy you posted, the one with the son that's actually infected. He's worried about like the fact that you have beautiful girls there. So these guys haven't really been around women for a while. So there's the impression that there could be like rape or something like that taking place. But then you have the Reverend who also looks at it from a different angle. Is like, oh yeah, I believe the men will probably try to have sex with the women, but it's because the women are evil and they're whores and all this other stuff. And then of course you have the idea of the werewolves themselves outside the fort. And of course our lead guy has been hiding the fact that his own son is still alive and actually is infected, which comes out later. And you know, it's all about the paranoia and the distrust between the men, the women, and all that.
I think with this one, it's got the strongest when it comes to characters. It's got the most out of all three movies. I think this has the best. My most positive thing, it's got the most diverse characters out of all the films. Even the doctor who is using leeches to discover if you're a werewolf. Now you get the guy who he was trying to stop the werewolf coming and he gets bitten. And he's like cutting up the leeches because he knows if I kill the leeches, they can't detect that I'm changing.
Right. Paranoia.
And, yeah. So that's when the doc's like, put a leech on your chest, son. And he does, and immediately the leech is like rejecting his blood because he knows the blood's contaminated on his chest. So he shoots him. And I show this picture again, even this guy, you know, they're trying to convince about the different wolves, and they're like, well, the wolves are our men from the Bulge that went out looking for supplies. And he's like, it cannot be, they're not. Then when they cut one of the wolves up, it's got a tattoo which matches the tattoo on his arm, which shows that werewolf is his brother.
Yep.
So, and you see his emotions change because obviously he knows what's happened to his brother.
And that's funny because you and I, we did the stream you did the other day with werewolves, where that one went over the top. Where like if you were, let's say, a punk rocker or something, you'd have your leather jacket on as a werewolf. It looked a little ridiculous. These, it was more subtle. So you know, you might have like, as you said, the tattoo of somebody you knew from your clan or whatever. It's subtle, and so then like it makes more sense. Like it would hide within the body of the werewolf. That works for me. That works a lot better than what werewolves was trying to do with it. You know.
Yeah. And that's what I think. Now that we're talking about it, the third one, I think I do enjoy. And like I said to you, I grew an appreciation for these films that I even bought the box set, the Blu-ray box set, because I actually fell in love with these films as I progressed through them. Like I see the second one's the one that frustrated the most.
Yeah.
But this one, I like how, like you see, it goes back to the beginning and it's more like talking about the bloodline between Bridget and Ginger and the connection between the good and the evil and the black and the red, like symbolism. of it. And as the plot progresses, the Indian guy, who he takes Ginger and Bridget to the female, I guess, enchantress of the woods, and he puts they say, all right, nothing can be prevented. It is what is going to happen is going to happen. But puts her under this spell, and she kind of falls asleep, Bridget, and she has the vision of killing Ginger, and he says, I've had a vision of me dying. And as they wake up, Ginger's disappeared, but the enchantress has been killed. Bridget's like, I figured out what I need to do. She goes back to the fort. The Reverend's kind of took over with the other scumbag, and he's like the guy who was in charge of the fort now got no credibility, because they now realize his son's is still alive and is a werewolf, and he actually sacrificed his son.
Mm-hmm.
He actually, that scene was pretty tough, that when his son was discovered, and he's like, son, don't worry, and he ends up shooting them, and he falls into the pond, into the well, and there's that scene where they're bringing his body up from the well.
And that's the thing, and I like how they addressed it, because these guys were very adamant about not taking chances with people that have been bitten or whatever, but at the same time they addressed it very well, how this guy, despite his calmness and the way that he led this fort, was like, it's still my son. Like, he was having a hard time because it was his son, and that he was somehow thinking or dreaming that he could save his son in some way. But once his son got exposed to the rest of the group, he knew that he either had to kill every other guy there to protect his son, or decide to put his son out of his misery and just regain the trust of the guys there.
Yeah. And it was quite a sad moment. And, he did what he thought was right by his son. But as you know, later on, Bridget returns to the fort. He decides to help her by, setting her free and setting fire to the fort, and then taking his own life by blowing his own head off after he's actually been bitten by a werewolf. But prior to that is that amazing scene where Ginger, Bridget basically gets captured, and it's all a ploy. She gets captured and she goes to the fort with the huntsman. And, he's like saying, I'm there to protect you, but then Ginger turns up, and it's like she's got the robe on, and then she gets through the gate. She's then suddenly beat up. Suddenly then Ginger shows her who she is and slashes his throat. And then opens the gate, and you just see this horde of werewolves come flooding into the fort. And that scene for me is my favourite.
Yeah, it was kind of cool too. The hunter, the Native American hunter, he, was actually really good with his arrows. Like, he was taking some down, even though they eventually overwhelmed him. But I like that character as well. Like, that's the one thing that people will notice if they actually watch this franchise, is that these werewolves don't need silver to take them down. Like, the very first werewolf they come across in the first movie is actually killed by a car. A truck hits it and just basically explodes it like a regular animal. So these aren't the kind that need silver bullets or anything to kill. But, again, when you have a lot of them, they can overwhelm you. And especially during that time when you had to reload your guns with powder and stuff. So it wasn't like you could just take a machine gun and start nailing them all down. So I do like that aspect. Like you said, I do like that part a lot. It's one that I thought reminded me of Rise of the Lycans, where they just kind of overtake the fort and take over and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just at the end, just when you think the hunter's gonna he's telling Bridget, right, fulfill the prophecy and kill your sister. But he had a vision of himself of him being killed. He never said how. And Bridget's the one that ends up killing him. and she ends up siding with her sister, and she goes, "You and me forever.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna stick together." And the rest of the werewolves are dead. Ginger will eventually become one of them. But the film ends where they're basically sitting in the snow holding hands. And I feel as if the way it was ending, where Bridget says, "I'm cold," and Ginger goes, "I am not," and the holding hands, I got this funny feeling that Ginger was going to scratch or bite Bridget and basically make her become a werewolf, so they will be together forever.
Yeah, I mean, and that's cool how it's like kind of an ambiguous ending, because you can see it a couple ways. You can see it exactly as you said. In order to save her sister from freezing to death, she might bite her, give her the blood, become werewolf. Or you can look at it as like maybe Ginger just doesn't want to subject her sister to the same path or the same horrors that she will become, and basically just hold her sister till she passes away. So I like that open ending of where you can take it any which way you want. But considering how close they are forever, I think that you're right. I think Ginger probably would eventually bit her and made her one of hers, and that sort of keeps that bloodline going. But it's a pretty cool film. Like I said, you and I, we've done a lot of these franchises within your horror thing, and you know, a lot of those franchises have a lot of bad movies in them. We won't talk about The Howling too much, but this one, despite just having 3 movies within it, I can highly recommend seeing all 3 of them, because they are all very good on their own way. Maybe not as good as the first one, but still very solid if you want like a good trilogy to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Like seeing the fact that there is only just the 3 of them, they're an easy watch. If you're into things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and things of that nature in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm sure this would be something that would grab your interest. So, ratings. How would you rate the Ginger Snaps?
So in order, the second one would be last at number 3. Would be a 7 out of 10 for me. The beginning would be number 2 at an 8 out of 10 for me, and then the first one, Ginger Snaps, is a 10 out of 10 for me.
So my order would be this. Now that we've talked about them, I didn't know what my ratings are going to be, but kind of having this conversation with you kind of confirmed like my feelings. So the second one is third. If I was going to rate it out of 10, I'd probably give it a 6. The third film is second, and I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. The first film, of course, got as it's the first one, and it was the one that grabbed me the most. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I still really enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah,
and
pretty close.
Yeah, and of course, like I say, these are an easy watch. And at the end of the decent werewolf films, there's a lot of shit werewolf films out there.
Yeah,
Just
you
look
could
at
do a
half
lot
of that.
worse for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Look at half the Howling franchise. And I'll be quite honest, we did another Taste the Blood special. We did 4 films: Werewolves, Howl, Dog Soldiers, and Late Visits. I would even pick these probably over Howl.
Oh yeah, easily.
Easy.
Yeah.
So there you have it. This is the last of the taste, not the taste of fucking blood. This is the last, the Fear the Wolf, the month of
You see,
werewolf.
people, he still can't just give it up to the werewolf. He's got to inject his vampire bullshit into everything.
Werewolves are cool and vampires are cool. But what can we say? This is the last of this year's specials, and I'm glad I've had to do with my amazing friend, Mr. DJ Anubis. Of course, on the channel, beginning the 2nd of November, we're returning to normal programming on the channel. No more month-long specials for now. But the first thing we're going cracking is this, which is Kaiju Connections, Yongori, Monsters from the Deep. That'll be 10 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. Pacific time on Kaiju Connections. But what is coming to the Metal Tavern Radio?
Well, as far as actually, I don't have anything planned for myself unless Neko and I do the next rated R for Romcom. We were supposed to do it Sunday, but things just got busy. So maybe Friday, her and I will do that since it's pretty open. But tomorrow, I'll be joining Autistic Lizard and Jedi Granville on his channel to talk The Mummy from 1999. And then on Saturday at 6 p.m. my time, I'll be with Samurai and Rick Myers for the next action film Autopsy, discussing those films that Rick has in his list. And then later in the evening, Olvin and I are for Silver Screen Savants. We were getting back into James Bond, and he's chosen Thunderball to discuss review. So that's where we'll be at with that.
Nice. Like I see, first thing on the card is Yongori for Kaiju Connections, and I do believe your pick for the retro classic is Raw Deal, I think, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think the Into the Darkness franchise is going to be The Omen.
Omen, oh, cool. Yeah. Are you going to do the new one? Because I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, yes. I think there's 4 regular films or 5, and then the first Omen, which I went to the theaters and thought was pretty good. But
I do know the cinematic synergy for next month. You've chosen Bone Tomahawk as the one that we're doing.
Hell yeah. Bone Tomahawk. I never seen it for a while. I thought, let's do a Western with a bit of a twist. But anyway, this has been Fear the Wolf, the month of werewolves. Hope you've enjoyed the content, and if you want to check out any other content for this month's special, check out the playlist on the Entertainment Headquarters. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you've seen, and of course, please like, share, and subscribe to the Metal Tavern Radio, because my good friend Mr. DJ Anubis puts out some amazing stuff out there, so please check him out as well. But have a great Halloween, everybody, and
stay safe.
Stay safe, and we'll catch us all at the next one.